Okay, sweet. So, welcome to Daily BA. My name is Ryan O, behavior analyst. I'm super passionate about all things that have to do with human behavior, even behavior of any living organism. So that's kind of what you expect on this channel. Now, today, a live stream. The live stream is something I've been experimenting around with, and I want to do a whole lot more. I've now built out the capabilities to be able to bring on guests, things like that. So if you want to be able to know when those things are happening, notifications have to be set and you have to be subscribed. Today, what I want to talk about is a whole lot of things that I have been thinking about when it comes to social media and behavior. And a few things up front. First of all, this is purely just stuff that I've been learning and I want to pass on and I think is really interesting. Hopefully consider it like a curated list of information about behavioral manipulation, behavioral insights, things like this that are going on, and what other thought leaders outside of the community of behavior analysis, what they're talking about and what they're thinking about. So this is me just kind of passing off like a resource list and resource dump. I am not joking. You can go watch a 10-minute video or you could go chase like potentially 30 or 40 hours worth of content via books, videos, and things that I'm gonna pass off today. It's totally up to you. This is just informational purposes. And the whole BCBA tied to my name, Board Certified Behavior Analyst, this is just me passing on information. This isn't endorsed by anyone, like the BCBA, stuff like that. It's just educational, informational, and partially entertainment stuff. And I want to get some public discourse and feedback on where I'm kind of going with this, what I've been consuming, because I think there's some fantastic implications for behavior analysts. So, the other thing is I'm going to get into, at the very end of this, I'm going to get into some technology called blockchain, which has some really interesting applications and promises. And I just like to make it really clear up front that I do have a very small percentage of my portfolio, about 10%, that's invested into crypto stuff. I don't think that influences it whatsoever on what I'm going to talk about today, but you should know that. And that's not even really you'll see how that ties in probably in an hour. This is going to be a long one. So, greetings, truth teller. Yo, what's up? The behavioral observations. Oh man, we got an OG in the house. Yo. Okay, so I'll be paying attention to these. Holler if you have questions, comments, things like that. Know that I'm on about a 20 or 30 second delay. That's just how these things work. And I'm super stoked. Okay, so why? Why talk about these things? First of all, the internet has allowed me to do a whole lot of amazing things then, and I think this is true for many in the generations that have been a part of the internet being adopted, mainstreamified, or even grown up on it. And so I just have like this channel as a result completely of the possibilities of the internet, right? The things I've got to do, people I've got to help, the people that are watching either now or watched any video ever, like that is a result of these sort of things. So I have a lot of love and appreciation for what the internet can afford. It's completely unbelievable, but it is also imperfect. Now, in addition to that, social media is like the largest human experiment that has ever been conducted. I haven't gone out and quantified, like benchmarked that, but like that's how I've come to view it now. It is an experiment in behavioral manipulation. Social media is. The internet doesn't have to be, but social media surely seems to be that way. And one of the most pressing issues is how can we use this for good? And I want to explore some of those sort of things today. We saw historically things like the Arab Spring, where technology like Twitter was leveraged to be able to put some pressure on democratic movements or movements for democratic systems. But we also saw the very same thing, the very same platform actually, Twitter, being used in disinformation campaigns to actually suppress as well. And so it's like these social media platforms are a blessing and a curse, double-edged sword, however you want to say it. And I want to share some of those resources and thoughts around this. I also was reached out to sometime around July or something like that to write a chapter on behavior analysis and social media. So I had to start doing a much more serious deep dive, be able to pull things in and craft things. So I want to share some of that. I guess that influence to develop this sort of things. Not that I'm going to share the content of the chapter. That'll be out in May sometime. But then a couple other things, I guess, just for clarity is there's also, the worldwide news of censorship and what's been going on in the United States over the last week or two, but really this has been an issue that's been around since social media and even parts of the internet, right? So that's one of the reasons. I'm actually going to come back to this. This is a fantastic resource that I found recently, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, that I think does some pretty good, I believe as well, from what I've read so far, unbiased perspectives that are for the betterment of that are all for the betterment of society, and like how do we start to really pull apart these issues. So they have a piece on this. I'm going to bring this back up, and the most recent thing that I shared to patrons also was The Dissident, a movie that came out talking about Jamal Khashoggi's murder. And so there are a number of different reasons that I guess I've been interested in these sort of things, and those are a lot of them. Now, I want to start with today this gentleman that's named Hank Green. And Hank Green, I had the pleasure of meeting actually in person. Look up to him quite a bit. Hank Green, this is his website. He founded Crash Course. So if you've ever looked at Crash Course, there is a whole lot of value and information there that you can go check out. He's created just educational empires is how I kind of consider it. And he also wrote a couple other books, And what else? So before the books, he's the co-founder of VidCon. It was sold off. I look at him as a fantastic science communicator and just personality that is trying to use social media for the right reasons, right? To give back, to make the world a better place, to solve injustices, inequity issues, things like that. Now, he wrote a couple books. These two books are a series. The first one is an absolutely remarkable thing. You can see here, roaming through New York City, 3 a.m., 23-year-old April May stumbles across a giant sculpture. Delighted by its appearance and craftsmanship, like a 10-foot-tall transformer wearing a suit of samurai armor, April and her best friend, Andy, make a video with it, which Andy uploads to YouTube. The next day, April wakes up to a viral video and a new life. News spreads quickly that there are Carls, these statues in dozens of cities around the world, from Beijing to Buenos Aires, and April, as their first documentarian, finds herself in the center of an intense international media spotlight. This, I'm going to give no spoilers here, okay, just to be clear, but this book was published in 2018. It is as if there was something that kind of like overnight, all of a sudden changed the world forever. It might ring some bells when it comes to the pandemic, what's been going on. It was written prior. And if you've even seen some of the things that were going around online about the different monuments that were popping up in Utah, California, Romania, I think. I can't remember where the other one was. This might have been brought up in that context. But what it is a book where he's talking about, through a narrative, what it would be like if all of a sudden you've got this amassed a bunch of followers, and what happens when you have social media platforms that are designed to amplify messages, and it's for better or worse. It's fantastic. So I read this last summer, and then he came out with a beautifully foolish endeavor. Follow up to it, closes and wraps everything up. If you're looking for a narrative, something that is fun, yes, it's in the sci-fi kind of category. I promise there's nothing like really sci-fi about it. It's just since it's set in a world in which there is these unknown things that show up out of nowhere, it fits in there. But for behavioral analysts or anyone who's interested in behavioral science, it is unbelievably fascinating at how well he seems to understand psychology and human behavior. And I'm not surprised, because this same gentleman, Hank Green, is also, like I said, the founder of Crash Course. One of them is Crash Course Psychology, arguably one of the biggest dissemination outlets on psychology on the internet. Knows this stuff. And now, so Hank Green had posted the other day a tweet, and this tweet was very fascinating. He breaks it down. So I want to share his video. I'm assuming here that Hank Green is not going to come after me for sharing his video on my channel. especially when it's just encouraging further discourse and pointing towards him. And then I've got a number of other videos that I want to show and get into, but those will be highlighted and like showing you like, hey, go check this out. I'm not going to actually show them today because I don't want any copyright strikes, and they're fantastic watches in their own right. Okay, so we're going to listen to him
authoritarian strongmen, which
get us back to square one. Come on. What are we doing here, you two? Come on.
I want to talk about this tweet. This tweet that I made right here. It says, with any luck, the next generation will look at social media the way that we look at cigarettes. I tweeted, I just was like, rah, and I tweeted that. And it has like 50,000 likes. And I want to, I want to temper it. And talk about what I'm actually talking about. Now, I intentionally, like, look, if we're being honest with ourselves, I intentionally made that tweet sound like I was like, anything I do to make this tweet sound more like how I actually feel is going to make it less punchy. And to some extent, I want a punchy tweet right now. And so I think that I ended up tweeting something that, like, it's not clear what it means. And it's punchy, and it is the very thing that it rails against. Not that I'm tweeting, but that I am tweeting in a way that is all about having the punchiest, hottest take. Maybe that's the real lesson, everyone. I did it intentionally. See, I lured you all in, and I showed you all 50,000 of you that. No, that's how I was feeling, and so I think, as I've been thinking about this tweet, that there are three really important things that we call social media that are all totally different things.
All right, so first pause. I've heard this analogy of, or metaphor of, like, have you heard it used in both ways, that social media can be like these other bad habits we may have. Bad habits, right? Cigarettes is what he's alluding to here. But I think it's fascinating where he shows, like, he understands that what he's doing here is getting these likes and clicks as a result of it. He's trying to put a point out there. But what he starts to back up here, first would be the sphere of, like, behavior analysts on social media is dabbling and learning in these same things. How do we create content that will disseminate behavior analysis, but do so in a way that is true to the science, but, like, leveraging what seems to be working on social media? And a good example of that is hot takes. We see hot takes and behavior analysis across Facebook groups, across Twitter, across all over the place. These hot takes happen all the time. I've been subject to making them myself sometimes. They can work. But when we talk about social media, and what I think Hank really provides is a really useful thing here, is he talks about what social media can break down into. He starts to provide a little bit of a starts to a conceptual analysis of three ways that we start to think about behavior analysis, think about these social media organizations, and what we mean when we actually say social media. So the first one that he brings up is about right here.
This is separate from that first thing. The corporate, like, there is Facebook and there is Twitter and there
I lied.
Call social media that are all totally different things. There is this new lowered barriers to communication and to audience and to access world where individuals have platforms that can be as large as news media organizations. And where Donald Trump has 88 million followers, where I have 1 million, where, like, this world is weird, right? And where anybody can tweet anything, and then suddenly everyone will see it. But also the same on YouTube and on Facebook and on TikTok and on Instagram. Like, all of these ways that we have developed these technological tools that allow us to communicate in new and rapid ways. I think that regardless of what platform it is, that thing is one of the things. Just the way that the internet has lowered the barrier to communication and lowered the barrier to distribution and made it so that anybody can communicate and any idea can be amplified. And
so this is 100% what I was talking about. Social media provides this amplification. If you learn how to use the platforms, you can tie your message into the ways in which the context of those platforms work. You can start to really amplify your voice. So this is one thing when we talk about social media, right, is the democratization of the technology to be able to allow people with the devices and those sort of things to be able to, or those that choose to sign up for the terms of service, to be able to share their ideas out there. Now, social media can also take another, connotation, or we could have something else here. So he continues on.
Corporations themselves. This is separate from that first thing. There is Facebook, and there is Twitter, and there is Google, YouTube, and there is TikTok, and there is Facebook with Instagram again, and there's even Twitch, but maybe a little less so. And so there is Jack Dorsey, and there is Mark Zuckerberg, and there's Susan Wojcicki, and there's Vanessa Pappas is the head of TikTok in America, if you were curious about that name. And all the...
And so what we have here is we have, first of all, to reiterate, we had social media, like those tools and the ability that the technology set forth in the way that it's designed. He's talking about now that we also have social media as the platforms themselves, like the companies. And he goes on to say here, but I'll shorten, you have the decision makers within them. And this is one of the big questions that's been going on, especially recently, is like, oh no, what happens when we have so much power that is put into certain members in society? Now remember, Hank Green wrote a book about this. He's been paying attention to this sort of stuff. Like there's some interesting themes here when you start to connect these things together. But he breaks down a third area of social media that I think is also very fascinating, or a way in which we should probably be thinking about this. And so I'll skip to that part really quick.
And then there's the third thing, which is the people who use it and their behavior. So how do I, as a user of social media, use it? And this is probably what most people are. Well, no, I think that when you say social media, it's like it's so easy to get on board with that because it's not clear even what that is. But we are social media. You are an editor if you have a Twitter. You might not know it, you might not have a lot of impact, but someone like you who will have had a big tweet and didn't mean for it to happen. And people, there's this tweet, you probably saw it because it was on Facebook, it was everywhere, where it was like, here's reasons to impeach Donald Trump. He won't get a pension, he won't have access to his travel budget anymore, and that's not true. None of those things are true. Yes, he won't be able to run for president again. That was the one true thing on that list, but the rest of them were untrue. A reporter reached out to that guy and was like, hey, why did you tweet this? It's not true. And the guy was like, well, I saw it on Facebook and it made me feel good. And so I posted it on Twitter and that made me feel good. And it made a bunch of other people feel good. And they're like, well, it's true. Can you take it down? It's not true. So are you going to take it down? And he was like, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I lied to a bunch of people, but I think I'll probably just leave it because I don't know what to do. And it feels good. And I've seen that a bunch of times where I've been like, hey, this is wrong. The tweet you tweeted is wrong. I stopped doing this because it was so disillusioning. The tweet you tweeted is wrong. And then they're like, well, who's to say? And I'm like, well, it is. It's just wrong. Here's the...
So he continues on here, but I think what Hank's doing here is doing a very interesting thing where he's breaking down three different areas that we need to be focused on. First of all, the platform as it's designed through the technology can amplify voices. There's the technology, there's the company and the CEOs within that have something that we need to understand and analyze. And then we also have the people themselves, the people that are using it, just like we are right now for this live stream, and our behavior. And I look at these as interrelated, right? An actual systems level analysis would start somewhere like this, looking at each of these three different areas, and looking at how they interrelate, how they work with each other. Now, I I think a very interesting point with what's going on with talking about censorship and issues with social media, both culturally within what's going on with the U.S. System right now, or even within behavior analysis, and like our bickering and fighting that goes on within our Facebook groups and places like this, is that it really distills down into a fantastic point that he says, which really comes down to the behavioral design of things. So check this out. It's quick.
I think that
come on. It's right.
Success of a, you know, we are in a situation now where like I think that obviously the right call is to get Donald Trump off Twitter, because like he is able to use that for destruction in a way that is really only serves him and is very, very destructive to everything else. But like we shouldn't be here. We shouldn't have got here. Social media shouldn't, like, Jack Dorsey shouldn't be in a situation where he is that powerful, and Donald Trump shouldn't be in a situation where, like, we shouldn't be in a situation where anyone has been able to consolidate power on Twitter to the on a social media platform to the extent where if that social media platform kicks them off, then like it's a national crisis where we don't know how to deal with like a.
Okay, so you get where we're going here. See where we're at. We shouldn't have been here in the first place, and I think this comes down to the behavioral design. So someone who's interested in behavioral sciences myself. The reason social media fascinated me and the reason I even started this channel in the first place was it seemed like he's saying, it was a way to be able to amplify voices, especially for good, especially in a field that largely, like, we all need to be doing more of this, and we're trying to figure it out. And the manipulation of it and the way in which it's designed is unbelievably behavioral in nature. I've kind of come to the realization, I think, that behavior analysts can learn a lot actually from other people outside, especially in these tech sectors or in these social areas, because they are really understanding of what, like how to, on a large scale, influence behavior. And it shouldn't have gotten here, right? Like, this is a behavioral design, like a programmatic decision, and we as a society, like, built this. This is 100% within the realm of the science that Skinner laid out, talking about that we should be able to look at any of these sort of things. So where has this been leading me to? First of all, there's these three sections like we just talked about with Hank, ways in which I think there's a very big need for behavior analysts to be doing conceptual analyses of what's going on, and understanding this. We don't have access to the algorithms, but we can start to really look at a full conceptual analysis of, like he started with here, as a starting grounds of these three different areas that seem to be influencing each other. Now, there's been a fantastic person that has come onto the scene more popularly after being in The Social Dilemma, if anybody watched that. And the gentleman is, but I was going to say that the gentleman has been talking about these sort of issues for over a decade. So he may be relatively new to you. You may never have heard of him, but this has been a fantastic source of information. Listening to Jaron Lanier. So my first goal of this little mini segment is, if you do not know about Jaron, please look him up. Please check things out. I'm going to put a couple different videos that you can go check out. Andy, what's up? I got a comment here. I will say many of the political platforms I follow have been canceled. I'm not okay with this. We need internet bill of rights. So I'm going to try to end up in a position at the end of this live stream suggesting where we should maybe be focusing some time. And at the very least, and especially if you don't agree with me on that, you can just explore some of the stuff that I have been consuming in this area. My first step when not knowing what to do, whether I'm on, like, whether or not I guess when I feel like I don't understand something is what I'm getting at, regardless of what the issue is I try to educate myself by a bunch of different experts. So I would look at Hank Green as the first. The second one I would look at is this Jaron Lanier. And Yeah, the Godfather of VR. That's one of the first things he actually did, I think, is he had a TED. I actually don't have him up here. Sorry, I need to keep working on my hotkeys. Yeah, so I think one of his first things he did at TED was bringing VR to a stage there and talking about virtual reality. Now, the ethical questions, I'd like to get into those a little bit too. I'm actually going to head there. So what I'm going to be saying, I guess largely throughout today, is me summarizing points that these gentlemen make. Folks like Jaron and Hank and others. You can go watch the source material. I forgot to link everything in the description of this YouTube video, but I will put it up immediately as soon as this is done in a comment section for everybody to check out. If not, you can also just like Google and look at the titles right now. And so I just want to this is me regurgitating information that I found from these people that I do think is worthwhile talking. So first of all, he says how we need to remake the internet. And in this, he proposes some pretty interesting things. First of all, the gentleman is very in tune with and understands behaviorism. He talks about in this very TED Talk, Skinner's Box, talks about behaviorism. He knows at least a precursory understanding from listening to his talks and reading some of his information, that he understands that there's basic things like reinforcement and punishment that alter our behavior. He even has an understanding and alludes to respondent behavior in some of these talks. It's very clear that people within Silicon Valley and those like Jaron that are looking at it from a more skeptical eye, I think of what's going on out there too, understand these things. Probably far better than we do, would be my hunch. I don't have anything to support that, but that's my guess. And he says that in short, this world of social media, we've created it and we must undo it. And the issue is, when we're talking about truth tellers saying this boils down to ethics and monetary conflicts of interest, quite possibly. And he boils it down to, in a number of different things, this video as well as in the social dilemma, that this comes down to an ad-based revenue model. So one of the assumptions here is that the ad-based revenue model is the core issue. So what we're talking about here is we have the platforms, we have the people that want to use it, we have the people that the platform decides it's free, the people want to use it for free, and in the middle there is the ad-based revenue. So folks like myself could go out, I could buy some ad time, whether on YouTube to run pre-rolls of my channel or my courses or something like that before you click into a video, and Google, knowing what it knows about people from their data, can place that in front of folks. You could also do this on Facebook, and I'm going to disclose this number of times. I've got it in my script here, my notes, but I run these ads. I run these ads for the courses that we do because it helps target and get information in front of people. Now, I don't think I'm doing overly manipulative things. I'm just saying, hey, we got some CE content on this topic. If you enjoy it, check it out. That could be a topic for another time. But this ad-based revenue model, like you're bringing up here, Truth Teller, seems to be a big conflict of interest. And there's some propositions that he makes that I'll get to in a section in a little bit that may be able to solve this, which is super interesting to me. Yeah, 2 subs. Why is so much of modern society under complete control of advertisers? I read a stat a number of times this week that was between 4,000 and 10,000 advertisements per day are what people are running into. That is, if you, just like use social media, go about your typical day driving around the city, don't use an ad blocker, things like that. Unbelievable. And it's this ad-based revenue model that he says, we created this world, we must undo it. Now, he talks about social media networks as behavioral modification empires, I believe is this term, rather than social media networks. And it's on point. I do think this is the largest experiment that we've ever seen in behavior in humankind, straight up. And he makes a good point here that it's not bad people that do bad things, but a global mistake. And this actually resonates with things that we talk about in behavior analysis. Pat Fryman, the work at Boys Town that he completes, there's a saying there that there's no such thing as a bad boy, there's no such thing as a bad child. The idea here is that we're not going to blame the person, we're going to look at the environmental circumstances and the situations throughout their lifetime that start to lead to these sort of things. And Jaron here takes the same perspective, which I think is really cool, taking this contextualistic, we're not going to point the finger, we're going to look at this as a really bad global mistake of certain things that have been, that have been designed for these advertisement revenue models to be able to leverage. Terry brings up, third-party cookies use personal info to market to us based on purchase history. Sometimes your phone accesses this info without permission. Cookies, I don't bring up cookies, but cookies are one way in which you can do these sort of things. Think about them as technology, that when you visit a website, it tracks who you are, maybe not specifically who you are, like your name and things like that, but it'll track your IP address or other things to be able to link up. These can be a very useful tool if you're, I guess, looking for certain types of information. Sometimes I've been enjoying an ad that's put towards me that I've actually been looking for. That's my personal take. There's the other side of it, personally, that like sometimes I absolutely hate them. I do think the larger issue here isn't the personal preference. It's like, how have we designed this, and are people aware of what's going on? Which is a lot of what Jaron talks about. So the ad-based revenue model, these behavior modification empires. Remember this thing of, it's not the people, but it's a system in which we designed. Now, he asked the question, which I actually want to put out to you all, is would you pay for a service? Like, would you pay for something like a YouTube or a Facebook or a Twitter that was purely set up to where you pay a premium so that you didn't have to be a part of this ad-based revenue model? This happens. I actually am a part of YouTube's premium, or whatever they call it now, that allows me to like eradicate ads by paying $10 a month. It doesn't add a whole lot, but it's very, I guess I'd be curious out of y'all that are comfortable sharing, would you switch over to a paid service like this? And do you think it would work? Because what he brings up in this TED Talk discussion is this idea of what I would frame as a behavioral trap. What we have going on right now is we have companies and a lot of the employees that are locked into reinforcement contingencies for continuing the platform as the way it's designed is now. We have shareholders that are locked in to returns, prices, right, or dividends, things like that, based on the organization, that are continuing to influence and reinforce certain types of behaviors. And then we also have the consumers, the folks like ourselves. They can either be the content creator that kind of like dedicates part of their life towards this business model, like myself a little bit, or we could have folks like y'all that are just consuming like in this circumstance, but I also do all the time as well. And we're all locked in this behavioral trap. Like, we get this content for free. If we started to add, if we started to paywall it to be able to remove the ads model, like, would you do this sort of thing? Andy says yes, he's already started. Terry appreciates no ads. I appreciate no ads as well. Truth Teller, hate ads as well. It's really interesting. I hate ads. I do run ads on this channel. And part of the reason is like there's only so much that can be done in the with like a values-based model, or like in a day. And like if I can build that revenue stream up enough to be able to keep allocating more time and not have to chase other things, then that's nice. I've been torn on this, and yeah, so just I guess y'all know. Two Subs says, gladly to pay to remove ads, easiest exchange of value I could ever make. Problem is almost no one offers this exchange. Yeah, and so the first thing that Jaron points out here is that we need to move these into a paid model, is the first thing. Now he brings up another one that I'll bring up in just a second, but he says that society can't function as it is kind of the issue, where if two people want to speak to each other, that these folks are dependent on a third party corporate interest that is going to be the middleman, right? And be manipulating somebody at some point to be able to allow these conversations happen. I think this is a fantastic way to look at this. This is from a TED Talk in 2018, and it gets standing ovations. It is absolutely fantastic. This is on the TED main stage. Andy brings up the CEOs have a fiduciary duty to increase stock prices by almost any means necessary. That's part of that behavior trap that I wanted to bring up and talk about. Truth Teller, I wouldn't be surprised if we were in the minority. A lot of people won't realize they're locked in the schedules or reinforcement. Yeah, and that's part of the reason I want to bring this up is like, I think there's a lot of information that's out there that I've kind of found that I thought was useful to be able to provide both insight for people that may not even understand how they're being manipulated. So folks like Hank Green talks about this, but he also talks about it from the creator perspective really well in that series of 2 books. And then Jaron talks about this really well from more of the consumption, just general person that's on social media. And I also wanted to provide, hopefully this is like a starting point for some behavior analysts that may be really interested in this to just like consume and maybe start conceptualizing more, because that's what I've been trying to do. Now, I've already talked about this, but like we just want to note like the straight up bias that I have on like using these sort of things, because they are a very small percentage. We're talking about like 1 to 2% of my like annual revenue is built off of like things that I do on YouTube, Patreon, things like that. So now one interesting thing is like I deployed from day one a values-based model, which was set up through Patreon, which was to try to set up a way in which I could have some of this ad-based revenue model early, but also have it a way to where like people that consume the content could be able to start to dictate that content more. And so it's not perfect. There's not a ton of advertisers, I would say, that are like third parties that hop on. But I've been struggling with this, I guess, and trying to figure out this balance as well. Like if I get somebody, like I've been running a collaboration / like paid partnership with St. Cloud State University. They allow me to like block out some more time and work on videos with them that are on topics like the PsyD versus PhD piece that we did that I think are really valuable and useful. You got to be able to understand that there's a paid promotion bias there. It's marked in the corner when you click, but it's like a double-edged sword. And I guess I'm just bringing up that I've been torn on these as well. But it is unbelievable to what extent I do have support to be able to like dedicate part of my day to this. Like right now, I'm able to dedicate part of my mornings to creating content. So like I've seen some of the like benefits, and it's hard because you have these other things that might be tugging on you. Now, Jaron brings up another piece here that's pretty interesting. That is... oh, no, I have not watched this one, but I wanted to share this. So if you wanted another one to check out on Jaron's positions about things, there's this piece called How the Internet Failed.
Okay, good. Good, excellent.
Pause. All right, so bitrate's not up, but the 2-hour piece that he has on how the internet failed and how to recreate it. I've not watched this yet, but it's something we'll be digging into. And I wanted to point out before I get into one of his others on like how to potentially recreate things and redesign and build a solution on this, is to check out, first of all, I want to just point before I get into those, check this one out. This is my next on my list. And then actually one of the people that are in here pointed to a book that he had wrote that was called, where is it at here? I've got it on my Audible. I believe it's like 10 arguments for deleting your social media accounts right now. I've queued that up. It's about a 4-hour audiobook. I'll be digging into that. But to close out these couple videos, check out Jaron if you don't. And I think he puts some wildly interesting things up for people to consider. Now, the next thing that I wanted to bring up is still one of his videos, but kind of shifts the discussion a little bit. And I would show a little bit more of these clips, especially from these last couple. But anytime that you stream someone else's content, especially from someone large like the New York Times, these TED stages and stuff, you just like ask for a copyright. So this is the video. Go check it on your own, but I'm going to summarize a few things here. He talks about data is our behavior, right? Our behavior, we give it up for the convenience these things provide. He lays out some solutions. And the first is, like we talked about, that we have to start paying for these services, but also he brings up this idea of data dignity. I think data dignity is really, really cool. He proposes that data dignity would be the right to the data that you produce as a result of being alive is yours, and that you should be compensated for that if other people are making money off of that. And this is kind of here for creators already. So like this stream, other things I do will be out there, and it will make a little bit of cash as a result of being on that platform. Now, what is it? I think it's YouTube takes a 45% cut, and we're talking about it's usually anywhere from like $2 to $4 per 1,000 views. So when we're talking about it, like I'll get 100 to 200 views on this, we're talking like fractions of stuff here, but we kind of have the basis for this in the creator community. I want to acknowledge that. And he says that this needs to be tracked and that there needs to be a universal way of paying. I'm going to bring those two up. They're super important. This data needs to be tracked, and there needs to be a universal way of paying. And he proposes what he calls a mid. Now, these mids are pretty fascinating to think about. They are mediator of individual data. So he says they're bigger than an org, smaller than a nation, and kind of like a labor union. They're on their own, will be able to set their own terms, kind of like how we choose insurance organizations, right? There's gonna be different things that are set up, and we'll be able to opt into these. And the idea is that payouts will come as a result of the data that you put in. And payouts happen kind of like a pension plan. And this, first of all, is like total, complete oversight of our lives, potentially, which I think we've already like opted into this already. And he's saying like, why don't we just set it up to where these regulations and these solutions like a mediator of individual data would be able to reallocate portions of the funding for your data back to you because you already have it out there. I don't know if this thinking out loud handles the issue of like, should we be putting it out there in the first place, right? But for those that do choose to do these things. And my first thought is like, does this sound possible? Does this sound like a solution that if we were to implement paying for the service plus these mids, these mediators of individual data that know where your data is being used, how it's being used, and paying you a portion of that money back from the advertisers. So it's the advertiser money is coming back to you in a way because you put your data out there for them to learn on. Do you think this would be a solution? And I think the big brother nature of the conversation is extremely scary. I think we crossed that bridge, 20 years ago. So for me, it's kind of like, I buy this as a potential solution, but there is, and I want to acknowledge like another option, which is like just start deleting apps and deleting your trail of data and just not engaging in those. That could be an option. Like I said before, I'm kind of like, sometimes I enjoy the benefits of these platforms quite a bit and what they provide to me and who they connect me with. And other times I don't like them, so I'm kind of torn in between. Now, some other stuff, maybe while some of y'all are typing here, is he estimates that a small family, they've ran some estimates, he says, he alludes to that they think a small family could earn in the range of $20,000 per year just off of the data that they're already putting on to all of these different platforms, which is kind of crazy. Who knows? We'll see, huh? So I'm going to get to some of the law stuff and some considerations of what to read at the very end of this. Now, he says some other assumptions here. When you pay for things, generally they usually get better. So when you start to pay for services, they start to make them better overall. I think I would assume that in large. And he argues that we may see decreased use, but an increased economy. So this is over my head, but I think it's important to talk about and be curious in some of y'all that are on this maybe that might have some different expertise, is what happens when we start to break this ad revenue model apart from the people that are running their business on these. So if we started to have Facebooks, YouTubes that were set up to where they had to be a pay only. Let's say that there's legislation that goes in that it has to be a pay only and they have to remove this ad model. What would happen to their platform? Or if it was an opt-in only model, right? And we started to have like a social movement that starts to push platforms to do these sort of things. Like, can we tip those behavioral traps of the reinforcement that they get as being shareholders, as consumers, or as being the owners and employees of these organizations? And he argues that he thinks he would see decreased use, but an overall increase in the economy. I don't have the data on that. Unfortunately, this is one of the areas I'm going to start to explore here, but the potential for more money and a larger market cap and more opportunities for these companies to make money is probably going to be more interesting. So if this is true, it might be possible. And that's what I like about Jaron. He talks about things that might be possible. Like they are in a pragmatic framework and could potentially work. We need to test them. I guess the summary is he's really talking about the value of what you're getting should be much more equitable than where it is, and it should be always over. Value should always be over manipulation. It's not going to solve fake news issues, conspiracy theories, but there won't be a commercial incentive for things like that to potentially be going on as much. So he brings up some points that I think are really interesting here. And I said, don't forget these, that all of our data needs to be tracked, and this needs to be, there needs to be a universal way of paying for information. So this has led me to, and I've actually read on and off about this, for 3 or 4 years at least, blockchain. This blockchain article, I'm going to post in here. I could have been doing this before. But blockchain is something I'm learning about. I think I'm fluent enough to put some information out there that I don't think is incorrect or not factual, but I will be kind of glossing over a little bit of stuff here. So this Electronic Frontier Foundation article, definitely check it out. The blockchain technology presents a transparent, decentralized way to conduct electronic transactions. Its fundamental innovation is immutable digital ledger of transactions that is openly writable by anyone, yet remains censorship resistant and has contents can be widely agreed upon in most cases. So what I've been looking at with social media solutions, and where I'm making a leap here to be really clear to y'all, is that I think what the blockchain technology offers, which I'll get into a few of the core things in just a second, is a potential solution that would allow the tracking and the paying in a pseudo anonymous format, to where essentially someone at some point knows who you are, but the world doesn't need to know who you are. All right. So where did I first find this sort of stuff? First of all, I found blockchain and sort of technology because I was looking at a project in the late 1960s and 70s, 67 through 72, where Ogden Lindsley and a few other folks, Carl Honig was one, conceptualized this thing called the behavior bank. It's actually back here. I've got remnants of it. The behavior bank was the idea that if you contributed data into a bank and you submitted it as a deposit, you could withdraw answers to a question based on the data that was in there. All right. So it's a transactional system in which you input some data. You can ask questions. Think about it, I guess, largely as like an evidence-based Google, right? Like it's giving you information based off that data. There are a whole lot of things that need to be sorted out, the quality of the data, things like that, issues that we've seen when it comes to the development of data algorithms, things like that. But this is where I first ran into it, because what they were trying to do was a very similar procedure, which you present a way in which anybody can input information, but everybody could potentially know what's going into that and kind of leverage that knowledge for the greater good. So it's where I first found it, okay? Now, in addition to that, I also found this area of blockchain because I was working with a programmer on a project revamping some of our databases, in which he was talking about some of the things he was interested in. One of them at the time was Bitcoin. This was 2014, 15. I don't know what the price was of Bitcoin then, but he was really interested in. He was interested in the technology and the possibilities. So we used to chat about like, hey, this behavior bank could have been built on the blockchain, and to just connect the dots and maybe help that make sense. Imagine if you as a practitioner were paid as a result of implementing successful contingencies, and that you were only paid if you were implementing evidence-based practices and things that are actually leading to the outcomes of the client. So if you tied payment to outcomes and the effective implementation of procedures that we know work, then you would get paid, maybe at a higher rate than if you were doing ineffective things and things that don't seem to be working, right? And there would be some details to sort out here, but that is kind of the idea that the behavior bank was chasing, is like, if we could all learn as a group of folks what works and implement what works, then we could start to raise the standards over time. Now, if you want to really learn about the history of blockchain, there's a few things I'm going to link to. If you want to learn about the history of Bitcoin, banking on Bitcoin is really interesting, because there was a push against blockchain technologies. The most famous one is Bitcoin. It's used as a cryptocurrency. And the pushback is documented really well in that Banking on Bitcoin documentary. Last time it was on Netflix. I'm sure you can find it anywhere on the internet at some point. Just start to Google and look around. Now, blockchain, what does it do? It's a technology. Think about it as a bunch of interconnected computers. It's not, that can be either private or public. So a bunch of computers, private or public, think about a computer network, that can be, that is completely decentralized. Now, when I say it's decentralized, like the people that are allowing Bitcoin's blockchain technology to work are scattered across the world. We don't know exactly where they are, where those computers are. We don't know who they are. We just know that there's enough people that are running the technology and helping the technology of the blockchain that Bitcoin's built upon continue. So this decentralization is very fascinating, all right? Now, in addition, it's peer-to-peer. So you have the ability to be able to send things back and forth from people. Now, it is also transparent with pseudonymity. So the interesting thing here is, like I said, you will have things that could link to which account is doing what, but not necessarily know who is doing what. The actual founder of Bitcoin and that blockchain technology implementation is actually completely unknown because of the pseudonymity, which I think is still a fascinating part of this. But it's a transparent way to exchange things back and forth. That could be a currency, that could be anything, like I was trying to allude to when it comes to the behavior bank. And the possibilities there. A couple other things that are that are core parts of any blockchain. So we have decentralized, peer-to-peer, transparent. There's the irreversibility of records. So everything is publicly there. It is logged. It is logged by the people on that decentralized network, and it's verified by people on a decentralized network. And then there's computational logic. And the computational logic is pretty interesting. I will share really quickly here. I don't know the quality of this website, so I'm going to disclose that, but they were talking about the computational logic in some interesting ways here. So each transaction on the blockchain can contain computational logic, a smart contract that acts as instructions for the transaction. So there could be agreed upon ways in which we say that things happen that are then implemented. And they are implemented when those agreed upon ways are, whose conditions are met. And they function as so you can function in different ways, but imagine if you had a certain percentage of people must agree for something to happen. So for example, my understanding of this is that there are components of Bitcoin, the blockchain that Bitcoin's operating on, that could be changed, such as the total number of Bitcoins that are available, which they capped at roughly 21 million. But you can only change that if you had 100% agreement to change that computational logic. And since you have everything spread out on this decentralized network, there isn't a way, I think pragmatically, to ever change those sort of fundamental factors. So with things, one of the main proponents of like Bitcoin, from my understanding, is that since they solve for the scarcity issue, like there's only the 21 million, that the value can't be arbitrarily inflated. A whole lot of different options and things that can go on here. But the reason that I bring this up is I think that from my kind of consumption of all these sort of things is that the blockchain technology might be a solution and a way around having to deal with the censorship and some of the issues that are going on in social media. And if you think about, if you hear something like Bitcoin as blockchain, you think they're synonymous, they are not. And if you think what I'm proposing here is that like cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is going to solve our problems, I don't know if it is. I doubt like it is, but the technology of blockchain could be the implementation. And what I think is really interesting off of this is this was actually brought up in Jack Dorsey's tweet about the censoring and banning of Donald Trump's account this week. So if y'all wanted to check this entire thread out, you can. He is one of those overlords, CEOs, right? Of the social media platforms that have a ton of power. And he alludes to this. I do not celebrate, he says here, let me just share it. I do not celebrate or feel pride in our having to ban @real Donald Trump from Twitter or how we got here. After a clear warning, we'd take this action. We made decisions with the best information we had on threats to physical safety, both on and off Twitter. Was this correct? And he goes on to kind of talk about different things here. I think Jack is in one of those positions where he is he wears both hats. He's on the side of making the decisions at the and working within Twitter. Not that he has complete control there, but he is a part of this. But he's also on the other side of like understanding that this is an issue and that we need to be working on solutions here. This was the part that really fascinated me the other day when I read this, which is part of the reason I have so much passion for Bitcoin is largely because the model it demonstrates a foundational internet technology that is not controlled or influenced by any single individual or entity. This is what the internet wants to be, and over time, more of it would be. So, can blockchain technology solve these sort of things? I think it is 100% plausible, and it could. It comes down to probably education of the general public and understanding what blockchain actually is and what it offers, and the thing that it is most is far from just a crypto currency and a different form of payment. That is one of the applications. And then it comes down to like, if we all educate enough and can we push for these sort of things in a way that actually nudged these social media platforms to actually look at these things from these different perspectives. There are a few things that I've been really consuming on this and been very interested in. And if you just happen to be tuning into this part, I had noted that I have a very small percentage of cash for my like retirement portfolio and stuff that I mess around with that is in some of these cryptocurrencies, mainly because I do buy into and believe that this could be a potential way in which we start to interact and exchange information and share things beyond just the cash value of it, to be able to like in the future, I guess what I was getting at there. But I've been really educating myself on it the last couple months, more and more and more. So I wanted to point out a couple things that y'all can go check out if you're interested in this stuff a lot more, which is, first of all, this fantastic podcast that is far too
so those are the big ones that make
far too
for
underviewed.
sound money.
So it's how cryptocurrency is advancing human freedom with Rich Clark. This Rich Clark has become one of my low-key heroes. I would love to meet this person sometime.